welcome to another episode of the Kind Regards podcast, hosted by yours truly, Zamiwe Mwape. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to check. Have you subscribed and left us a rating? You have? Awesome. Thank you so much. Today's guest is a well-known figure in the Zambian personal finance landscape. Alongside her corporate work, Jane Mazimba is a financial literacy expert, a published author of her book, Catching Fire, and a public speaker. Her TEDx Lusaka talk on the FIRE movement is relatable and inspirational. In this segment of our discussion, we dive into topics like money management within relationships, the different money personalities, and the key financial discussions couples should have before committing to marriage. Did I mention she's a personal finance coach who's guided dozens of couples through their financial journeys? We'll also explore Jane's personal journey of financial recovery as she shares how she shifted her money mindset from scarcity to abundance. There is so much to unpack, but first, it is worth mentioning that none of what we discuss here constitutes financial advice. With that being said, Jane, welcome to the Kind Regards podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've actually been looking forward to this.
Have you?
Yes.
That makes me super happy. Okay, so to kick off, we're going to get into some icebreakers just to warm us up a little bit and so we can kind of know you better. So my first question is, what is your favorite thing about yourself?
I think it's my energy, actually. I think I carry really good energy. I can feel it for myself, but I can also see how people react to me. Yeah, I think the best thing about me is my energy, among other things.
I agree. And actually, that's why I had this as an icebreaker, because I think you have a very confident and strong vibe about you. And now I was like, I wonder if that's what it is. So
there you go.
Okay. In your book, you have a chapter called Create Beautiful Nights, which is about making a nighttime routine that sets you up for success the next day. And I'm curious to know what your favorite way to relax is.
So I've realized that I have a tendency to get overstimulated. So the best way for me to relax is actually I'm exploring ways to quiet my mind. So at home, if it's a nighttime routine, I dim the lights. If there's going to be sound, it'll be on low sound, nothing like too hip or exciting. And at the very end, I have been switching up my nighttime routine a little bit. At the very end, I find that reading has also become one of those things that allows my brain to just go quiet and focus on the one thing. So lately, or for the last couple of months, I've been falling asleep with a book a lot more. So I've switched up all my routines to allow me to have the book at the very end.
And what kind of stuff are you reading? Is it like fiction or nonfiction? Is it finance?
So I'm reading everything. I'm pretty open-minded. So my favorite book that I've read this year actually was A Covenant of Water. If you follow my Instagram, I think I did like a little post about how I found the book. Not so much a review, but just like feelings, my own personal feelings on the book. I love that it's so long. So that's fictional, but I really, really enjoyed that. But right now, I'm reading book 10. So I'm counting the books. I'm doing 24 for 24. So I'm doing book 10, Behind Schedule Much, and I'm reading Diary of a CEO. So I've mixed it up. It's been biographies and autobiographies. I've been reading great men because they tell us, or we know that success leaves clues. So I've read a few great men just to see like, what did they do? I'm also trying to find entrepreneurs that have a personality like mine, because half the time I thought I was crazy growing up. It's really a mix. If you go to my Instagram or my LinkedIn, where I do post as a way of holding myself accountable, I post on what I've read. You find that it's a mix. I think this year I've read Steve Jobs, I've read The Alchemist, I've read The Covenant of Water, which is fictional. My next book is going to be The Godfather, which is also fiction, but I've got Atomic Habits in there. I've got The Psychology of Money. So it's like a mishmash of everything that I am interested in.
I love that. And what is the most rewarding thing you've done?
The most rewarding thing I've done, apart from being a mother, or does that count?
It counts, and you can make it a two-pronged answer. So it's up to you.
I think that being a mom, I mean, obviously everybody will say but for me, it changed my life for the better. This confidence that you say, oh, you carry a lot of confidence. I feel like I got a lot of that when I was pregnant, when I saw what my body could do. Yeah. Like I always thought like before that, I always criticized myself. I was like, oh, you're too chubby, your legs are too fat, you got cellulite and this and that. I was always like nitpicking. But the minute I got pregnant and I saw my body changing and carrying this human being and feeling the heartbeats and the movements, I don't know. For me, it was a very positive experience. But even now, just being a mom, he's 9 now, just seeing this guy grow up into a full-blown human being with opinions, that's been very, very rewarding. But also, I was talking about this with my life coach. Financial literacy, me working especially with groups. I love the one-to-one. I love working with corporates, but especially when I'm working with groups and I share and like usually, especially around the debt management sessions, you can see almost a light bulb go on in people's minds. Like, okay, this is not a desperate situation. Like there's actually a way out. And even if I'm not a very high income earner, there's a way to build wealth. That is very, very rewarding, fulfilling for me. I definitely know in those points that I am living in my purpose.
That's beautiful. I love how one aspect of that is about Jane and how the second aspect is about giving yourself to others. I think that's beautiful. Okay, so let's get into the discussion. Let's get into it. Who is Jane, the person, the professional, the financial literacy educator? Who is Jane?
Jane is the person, a bit of a rebel. I think it's really been hard for me to like fit in, to conform in a way, like 100%, because I've realized the older I get, the more I accept that I'm so multifaceted. So Jane, the person, is very, very multifaceted, a bit of a rebel, depending on where you're looking at her from. Right? The corporates look at me sideways, but the creatives are like, yeah, you're fine. What do you mean? You're a bit of a rebel. And then I like to bring good energy because I realize that we have the power to create the life that we want. So for me, I choose to bring good energy wherever it is I'm going, whether I'm working or I'm playing or I'm just relaxing at home. It's very, very important. I am very protective of the energy around me and the energy that I put out as well. As a professional, I am in the finance space. Funny thing, everybody assumes that I studied finance or accounting. I actually studied marketing. So I have a Bachelor of Business Administration, with a marketing major. And then for my master, I have international business. And currently I'm flirting around with the idea of pursuing a PhD, but, still flirting with the idea.
Go ahead and give it a kiss. Go for it.
Yeah, it's just I don't know if I want to pick up one more thing on my plate with everything I have going, which speaks to, with the things I have going, I currently work for the biggest insurance company in the country. I won't say which one, you figure it out. I've been there 2.5 years. Before that, I did 10 years in banking. It's been a big life. And I've dabbled. I'm a bit of an entrepreneur here and there, but I really, really enjoy corporate. Like the core of my work is corporate. I really enjoy that whole, the structures, the systems, the politics, everything. It thrills me.
Really? I'm on sabbatical right now because I just needed to tap out of corporate for a little bit. But I do love it. And I think it's important to love how you're spending your time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. One of my former bosses, she's had a big impact on my life just by being who she is. And I know whatever she's impacted is unintentional. But Bandi Shivesakunda, she once said, bloom where you're planted. I don't even know if she would remember that conversation, but it changed how I show up at work. Bloom where you're planted. Like if you choose that this is the work that I'm doing now, you do it with everything in you. You give it your whole heart, everything. Because even if it's not your dream job, it's a stepping stone, Their skills, their networks, their perks that you're gaining from that place that will propel you to go to where you want to go. So yeah, I've just taken it on. I bloom where I'm planted.
That's part of your good energy, right?
Yes.
So Jane, your origin story as a financial literacy expert or educator is one of my favorites, actually, because you have candidly spoken about how you went through a marital separation. And what I love about your story is how you went through a marital separation that wound up with you coming, alive to the fact that you were in a significant amount of debt. And you not only dug yourself out of that, but you have reinvented yourself as this whole persona that we know and love on social media. And I think that's just amazing. You basically took something that I imagine is very challenging, made it a positive, and thrived in that. You've gone ahead and built this personal brand of yourself. You've written a book. You speak at seminars. You consult with companies. Well, that's what I'm assuming from my stalking, is that companies bring you in to do talks and all those things. So I would like for you to speak to that. And I'm also keen to understand what your relationship with money was before the separation or divorce. During that transformative period, what was your relationship with money like? And after that, basically where we are now.
Yeah, you've rightly put it. I have candidly spoken about my relationship, which I am sort of like moving away from now. I mean, I share it not to bash, but just to say this is the situation, because I feel like those are life-changing situations for both men and women. You go through a divorce or you go through a separation, it changes you as a person, but also it changes your finances. So I think before getting married, I think I was in fact, even during my marriage, I think before getting married, I was probably quite passive. I was probably a baby girl. Like when we talk about the money personalities.
No, I don't know about the money personalities.
Yeah, so that the money personalities, there's the savers, the spenders, and the enterprisers. And then there's the baby girls, or the ones, they don't really want to think about money much, like actively. I think that was me. I'm not frugal, but I've always been very strong-minded about what I spend on. So flashy things don't really excite me so much. I'm not really a designer label person. I'll have 1 or 2 bags. That's good quality luxury products, and that'll be it. I'm not one of those you'll find like 100 collectible bags just to show that I have them. So I'm not frugal, but I wasn't like an overspender. But growing up, I think I was privileged to have parents who took care of everything. So I wasn't really in a position to be like, oh my God, I really, really need to. I made money because I wanted to. It allowed me the creativity and the space to try different things. Know that if I fail, I can always come back. It gives a lot of freedom in that way. When I got married, I think I had to be a lot more responsible with how I make money. But even then, I think I was still quite passive about just planning the future and everything. There was always this thing at the back of my mind, like, oh, if oil spills, we can always go back to dad and like ask for help or something. But you can only call daddy so much, at some point. So immediately after the separation, that's the point where I was really forced to look at my situation, because like I share a little bit in the book, I couldn't pay rent. At some point, my car died. I think 2 weeks into the separation, my car died. So my dad had to do school runs again.
When it rains, it pours.
Girl! Yeah. So at that point, I had to face my finances. And I think I would say for the first maybe 4 months of that period, I was really like depressed and ashamed. It was a lot of shame. Actually, not even depression. I was depressed because I was ashamed, because here I am. Then I was pursuing my master's. But like, you've been working in the banking space for 5 years. You were married. Your life was seemingly good. So why are you back in the spare bedroom of your parents' house with your kid and the niece and the maid? And I couldn't even pay the maid. So there was a lot of shame there. But I am the type of person who decides how I'll show up. So yeah, there was a catalyst. My best friend came over and we set up these plans. But the minute I decided that this is the worst it's gonna be, that's the worst it's ever been. I literally just light bulb. I was like, you know what? I'm going to change my life. By the time I'm hitting this, my vision then was vision 2022. By the time I'm getting into 2022, we'll be debt free, and I can be very single-minded in that way. So then my relationship with money became stack up. I was just like I was whipping it up everywhere I could. I worked overtime. I ran a business. I sat in for people. I think I volunteered somewhere at the office. If there was a work event at the weekend and they're saying we're paying an allowance for you to work and you also log overtime, I'm there. I learned how to use social media to get money. As you know, Africa, we can't really monetize our pages, but there are other ways that you can gain an income. So I was using it a lot for marketing, getting customers. So yeah, that became a very go, 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 go. But I also realized it was a mindset of lack. It was very survival mode. And I think it's been survival mode from 2018 up until I would say sometime last year.
Really?
Yeah.
As recent as last year?
Yes.
Wow.
So I was working to get out of debt, which I got out of debt in 22 months. And after that, I started building my emergency funds and my investment portfolios. But when you look at how I was living my life, it was very much like I never want to be that broke again. I don't want to be that ashamed again. So I've really just been like stacking, like living very like minimalistic in what I drive, where I live, how I show up even just at parties and things like that. So last year, obviously I went to therapy and stuff. I started seeing a therapist and then I switched over and started seeing a life coach. And that's somewhere where we've been like, okay, how do we switch over from survival into abundance? How do we still live a really good life now, a very nice, comfortable life, but still plan for the future as well? And not having it come from a place of, oh my God, what if I never have? But it's okay because we're going to retire and I'll live how I want in the future. So yeah, it's been a work in progress. I still have those moments. Like we were talking about it recently with a friend of mine. I'm building a development property that I'm developing. But then also there's this trip that we want to take and it's quite expensive. It's like a luxury train ride through like 5 countries. And so it's like, oh my God, all this money, I could put a roof on my house. It's for next year that we're planning. So I've just decided that I'm going to set a goal for myself. Find the thing that's going to fund the trip. So start a business or take on a project or whatever to raise the money for the trip, and you go for the trip and then continue to work on the project slowly until it's done. But it's still a work that I still kind of feel guilty about. Oh my God. And that's still coming back from the lack perspective of, yeah.
So you said a couple of things that I want to touch on a little bit further. So you've mentioned how you were feeling shame when all of this happened. You've talked about how your relationship with money then became a survival mindset or something oriented towards lack. And would you say these are internal feelings or would you say they were externally driven? How would you speak to that?
I think our environment does play a role in how we feel on the inside. So it's this perspective of this is where you come from. It wasn't like you weren't filthy rich, but you were pretty much given everything that
comfortable.
You needed. Yeah. So, and you've been working in a bank for 5 years and you got married and you had a baby and like life's good. Like, why are you back here in a spare bedroom broke? Right? So part of it is obviously the whisper. Like we don't realize that when we gossip about people, when we snicker and say these things, it actually affects them. Like it gets buried in our hearts. So it could be like, I'll be like, yeah, I don't really care. But at the end of the day, if you hear those things enough, it does change how you show up. And so now for me, I carry this shame. Like, okay, what am I going to say to people? How do I explain to my friends that I can't do this with them? Like I am too broke, not even 1,000 kwacha to go out to whatever the place, granddaddies to hang out, because to me that 1,000 kwacha is what I have to get me over the next 2 weeks to the end of the month. So there's shame from the inside, but also fed by the outside. It's a lot of inner work and a lot of personal confidence that you have to build inside of you, but also internal because you allow the things into us. Like it's up to you to assimilate and soak in everything, or you can let it like hit you, yeah, but then flow off. I'm using rain as a metaphor, right? So you can have your protective gear, you can have your raincoats and your umbrellas in terms of like your self-confidence, a tight circle of people who love and support you. But the big thing that I have learned is like, guys, the global economy is rough. Everybody is going through so much. Like, there isn't a conference somewhere, a League of Nations, where people are just sat and they're like, on the agenda today, let's discuss Jane's failures. No. Like, most people actually either feel sorry or are even in support of you. And for the ones who will gossip or the ones who will say something, it's literally like 2 minutes. You were a topic for like 2 minutes or at a brunch and they moved on with their lives. And they didn't think about you again. Meanwhile, you're sitting here months and months and months worrying about what people are saying. No. So that's something. So the majority of it is intrinsic. We make it bigger than it really is.
I 100% agree that we don't take up as much mental space in people's minds as we think we do. And what I love about your approach, first of all, I appreciate you being candid in sharing the internal feelings as well as the impact that external stuff has. But I really love that you have also taken the step further, aside from doing, I'll call them physical things like saving money, building an emergency fund, getting out of debt. You're also doing the work to work on the internal. You know, you mentioned you've been to therapy, you've done the life coach. And I think that's an important aspect that sometimes we neglect. And you mentioned the book, The Psychology of Money, earlier. That's what I loved about that. It really speaks to the person, the individual, and their mindset and how they think and how that will impact finances. So in your opinion, what finance-related discussions should a couple be having throughout their relationship, before they tie the knot and after?
So definitely having conversations. So while you date, while you quote or whatever it is that you do where you're from, I think we should be establishing the type of money personality that your partner or potential partner, it's first you have to know yourself, by the way, but also establish whether your values around money align, right? If somebody is consistently saying, well, family is important to me, and family is not a big value of yours, just know that that partner is going to spend quite a bit of time, money, effort on family. So if family is not a thing to you, you're a loner, you want a quiet space, that might not be the right person. Or you might have to learn how to accommodate those needs. So for me, when I do date people, I do ask money questions. So it's not like I'll try to be like, oh, so what do you do?
Bring your pay slip.
Not like that when you're dating, although I think there's a time and a place for that, for sharing of like account details and things like that. But when you're dating, you're trying to get to know each other. So hypothetical, I was giving an example of myself. I like to travel. And I recently went on a date with somebody who was like ticked all the boxes and everything. But the minute I was like, oh yeah, me and my friend want to go to Zanzibar for this and that. It's like, yeah, traveling, women just traveling alone, spending a lot of money. What already was like, sir, like you and I are not going to chill. But to me, he sounded more interested in like buying expensive equipment for his farm. So he's like oriented that way. And that's you. We don't need to force things. First of all, I need to check myself. Am I willing to compromise? If I ended up with this guy and he wanted to sacrifice our big biannual holidays to instead buy, I don't know, milk purifier on our farm, will I be able to live with that for I don't know, 5 years, 10 years for the rest of my life, right? If it's a yes, it's a yes. Then let's get to a place where we compromise and see where we can find middle ground. But if it's a no, then it's a no. Let's just move on. And this is why I don't like this conversation online where it's like, oh, this woman is a gold digger. You have to go 50-50. No, she's not a gold digger. She's just not somebody who wants to work hard. Just go find somebody who's in your space, right? And again, those are important conversations in terms of, as a woman, I don't know, African women, I feel like we're kind of spoiled a little bit. Our men, for the most part, tend to take the majority of the financial burden. And now you want to date an American or a European who's come from a place where the women there, their feminism might be very much 50-50. Don't pull out a chair for me. I can do it by myself. And so this guy is like, no, you pay half the rent, pay half the water.
What do you mean?
Yes. So I feel like those are conversations that we have to have so that you Either find the middle ground or establish that this person is not for you. And that's okay. Nobody's wrong. Nobody's right. We are just not for each other. Let's go find the person who will be with me the way I want to be with me, right? So there's that. I think in the dating phase, that's where you sieve out and establish. I don't believe in blending any of your finances when you're just dating or courting. So now when you're legally married, I believe that, or from my coaching that I've had, I think now counting, I've coached 38 couples around finances since I started taking on couples. I find that the ones that are most successful have been the ones who blend their finances, not the ones who are, oh, this is her money, this is his money, because they're able to have more candid conversations. I think that one of the things that we haven't really talked about that might even go on a tangent is marriage is a superpower. I feel like a lot of our economies are not set up for single income households. They're meant for like a blend. So two people pulling towards one goal, building together projects, traveling together, like it's a superpower if you learn how to harness it. So if you are married, you're together, but you still want to operate like you're alone, you won't get as much done than the ones who come and say, babe, this is what I have. This is what you have. We want to, I don't know, build a house, right? I think that's a big life goal for people to own a home. We want to build a house. So we've bought a house, but let's pay down the mortgage quicker. They work together. One salary is paying down the mortgage. The other salary is taking care of the expenses. I think that becomes way more. In fact, funny thing, when you look at the study of millionaires, so the millionaire next door, that was 37 years ago, it was done in the 80s. And now the Ramsey Network has released the Everyday Millionaire. You find that the millionaires in the 80s were married, but the wife stayed at home. She was a stay-at-home person. She didn't work outside the home, let me put it that way. That's not to say that they're not contributing, because they contribute by creating an environment, by taking care of the kids, by creating this safe space where one of the partners can go out and just give it their best and earn as high as they can and come back. And they work together in that way. Now we see that a lot of the millionaire households do tend to have a double income. And that's okay. How are they blending their finances? How are they running projects? So that's important. Again, a lot of honesty around that. After you're not married, I'm not sure what money conversations should be having.
So basically what you're saying is they should have established all the conversations and all the structures they're going to have beforehand, and thereafter should them just be implementing and all systems go, basically.
Yeah, value-wise, goals should be established. As people grow and get older, you find that even those goals might change. Sometimes even our feelings, like I just said, I have been in survival mode, stacking every kwacha that I had into some investment because I might get poor again, I might be broke again. But now my view has changed. Now I am more into like luxury and stuff, right? So people will change, but if you have a baseline of having open and honest conversations, then it's easier to even understand the switch. If I had a partner 3 years ago and I was saving every kwacha, and then on my birthday, he buys me a government bond, versus this year, I'm like, babe, I just want a trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to explain. It's not like, who are you? Where's the drink that I met? No, it's easier to understand where the switch has come from, I think. So open and honest conversations need to be had.
And do you believe in having protective financial structures, right? Because I think people, in as much as you've said that the couples that you have seen that are most successful with their finances are those who blend. And I take it you mean like 100%, we're doing this together. I think people are wary of that because we've heard of horror stories where someone leaves you and they empty out your bank account. And I heard this saying which said, who you marry isn't who you divorce. So you should have certain protective structures, whether it's a prenuptial agreement. And I think bring it back down to earth. In Zambia, there's this thing where people will have secret assets or secret bank accounts. I've heard of women having entire houses that their spouses don't know about. What financial protection structures do you think are imperative for people to have as they come together?
I have heard those stories as well. I'm telling you, we've heard people faint because they found the house he's been paying rent has been his wife's house the whole time. Those stories.
That's crazy.
I think this goes back to the open and honest conversations that you have even before you end up married. You see, life happens, and most of us, when we think about bad things happening, we usually go towards cheating and divorce. But what if this partner of yours genuinely made that investment and then that investment just didn't work and you lost your life savings? What if the person passes away? It's not their choice, but now you're left. So those are things that can happen. So definitely protective structures. I think it starts with the conversation. If you're with a person and you feel like I need to protect myself, then you definitely have to get some therapy because that's coming from somewhere, right? Either experiences, either things that you've seen in your family background, or even the stories. Like we said, sometimes these things come from outside, but it means you have soaked that in so much that you are ending up with somebody that you don't trust. So I think that definitely you do need to do some work on yourself. And as a couple, I am an advocate of couples counseling even before you need it. I think also next step, once you are married and you decide to blend these things, I think then your wills and your trust and things like that become important because then you can establish like, okay, this is ours together. So if we purchase a home, we've purchased it together. That way it's not like, oh, now we are divorced. The woman remains with the house and the guy goes away with nothing. If we bought the house together, then we can either sell it and split the money, or we can, I don't know, one of us remains and pay off the other partner if we still want to keep the property. Things like that. Those become possible. If you are okay having those initial uncomfortable conversations, then you can have these things. Things like life insurance, I think that's so important. We've gotten to a point where for most of us, we're not yet rich enough to be self-insured. So those now become necessities within our budget. A life insurance policy, if you've got a spouse, you've got children who depend on you. And when I talk about buying things together, I'm not saying you contributed a penny, but did I make the home conducive enough for you to go out and achieve and purchase the properties and the things like that? Did I advise on the location, how we can upgrade? Did I help to maintain the property itself? Because I feel like, again, this is the conversation. Men will be like, yeah, I worked hard. She didn't even contribute anything. Now she wants half. She gave half of her life to make it conducive for you to achieve what you've achieved. So that's still contribution. So I feel like you can then protect yourself in that way. If as a couple, when I said couples that work together, I didn't necessarily mean they rent everything, like all the money is together. Some couples choose to keep separate accounts, but there's transparency and honesty in terms of this is what we have, right? So it's like, okay, this is my income, this is my income, this is what we have together. And then they can decide. Because remember, even as a couple, it's possible to have personal goals. As a couple, I want to pursue a PhD, you want to do something else by yourself. It's okay. We can have separate accounts, but am I hiding the man is where the dishonesty comes from. Am I hiding that I have 100K emergency fund somewhere? Right? We're falling apart in the house, and then me, I've got a property somewhere else. Those are big, big lies. I don't see how a marriage can survive on a big, big lie like that. So I feel like every couple does have a heartbeat that you will work from. Not everything that worked for one will work for the other, but the working together is pulling together towards the same goals. And I think the protective measures in this case are definitely the great conversations, the education that we need. Sometimes women genuinely, especially like I said, African girlies were a little bit spoiled. So you never had interest in how the money was made. You never had interest in how it was managed. And now this man leaves you and you're lost. You can't handle a budget by yourself. So learn about where it's coming from, learn about where it's going, and have fail-safes in place, have wills, have agreements, have a trust, have policies that allow you to be knowledgeable. Because even if I was divorcing a different person, but I was aware of all the investments that we have, all the property, all the agreements and things like that, I'll be more confident to argue that out. I could go to court and actually show where I contributed, whether it was monetary or not.
Okay, so speaking of the debt management conversation, many people in our communities are battling debt, especially as the economic situation gets tougher and tougher. What are some of the habits, mindsets, or blind spots that you think result in people having high levels of debt in our communities that sometimes become so burdensome that you have people contemplating dangerous things, What are some of those?
I think the first thing is education. We just don't have the education around money, where we are used to certain lifestyles or we aspire to certain lifestyles and we haven't educated ourselves to how to handle that, right? So suddenly I went straight from school where my dad was paying for everything, sending me pocket money. I never learned to budget. After 2 weeks, if I ran out of money, I could pick up the phone and be like, Mommy, please send me some extra. Daddy, please send me some extra. And they send, or they say no, but there was never really like, oh, this is how you do a budget. Do these important things first. And then suddenly you're like, oh, Jane, now you have a job. Here's a job, it's going to pay you 20K a month. And then I'm just excited. All I'm seeing is the zeros. Right? I'm just like, oh, I can buy a car. I can get a loan, buy a car. Oh, 20K. I can, I don't know, go to Dubai with my friends. I forget that there's rent. I forget that there's food. I forget that there's clothes. And then you find people are in this hole where at first they're excited. And then a few months in, they're suddenly indebted. And then trying to now get money elsewhere to pay for the debt, they dig and dig themselves into a deeper hole. So that's definitely the education we don't really have. Another thing I think is lifestyle creep, and that's a big blind spot. Lifestyle creep happens, I see it happening almost every day. For those who work in a corporate structure, people get increments every year. Like there's a standardized rate at which you get extra money. So you started off at, 10K a month. Next year, they give you 12K, and in your mind, it's extra money. So you start saying, oh, I'm going to move to a bigger house. But really, what the company is doing is they're moving along with the inflation. That wasn't an increment. That was an adjustment on your salary to help you manage, because inflation is also happening. So your bread that was 8 kwacha last year is now 10 kwachas. That extra 2,000 is meant to cover that. But we see the extra money and start expanding our lifestyles as well. We want to do more and more than what we did. I guess it also goes back to knowledge, right? Knowing the lifestyle creep happens because of a lack of knowledge. Nobody has educated us, or we haven't educated ourselves. But also, even if your money does genuinely grow, what you want to do is, instead of the salary adjustment, I did so well that I actually did get a salary increment. Ideally, I should strive not to change my lifestyle for the next 2 to 5 years, because that extra money that I've got now, that's what I'm supposed to use to build wealth. That's my wealth building tool. And now if I expand my life, I move to a bigger house, I drive a bigger car, I go on a more expensive holiday, then I'm still spending at the rate at which I'm earning. Meaning I'm left over with very little to save and invest. And investing is how we build wealth. So I think those would be the two big things. Just lack of knowledge and education, and also lifestyle creep is a big one.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Kind Regards podcast. I truly appreciate each and every interaction. Whether it's a like, a subscription, or a share, it means the absolute world to me. Be sure to join us in the next episode, where Jane and I discuss strategies for getting out of debt, including her personal story of overcoming debt and bouncing back. We also delve into her book, Catching Fire, which is structured as a week-by-week guide to personal finance over 52 weeks. That is the duration of a year. You won't want to miss it. You can connect with Jane on Instagram at Jane Mazimba and on LinkedIn at Jane Mazimba. And of course, be sure to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at The Kind Regards Podcast. Until then, I wish you a pleasant and abundant week ahead. Kind regards, Zamiwe.